last 24 hours, but the track is ready to go. 13 sleds from 7 different nations. It is packed full of winning content as well, so don't worry about the low sled count. I'm Martin Haven, delighted to welcome back to the booth. It's been long enough that he's forgotten how bad an experience it is. Welcome back, Steve Messer. Steve, Lake Placid, a real driver's track. It's so easy to give time away here. What are the guys going to be focusing on today?
It sure is. This track is considered to be the, if not the most difficult, at the very least, the worst track in the world for a push athlete to be in the back of. As you come in here, you've got quite a long way between the start grooves and the beginning of curve 1. So you got a lot of mistakes that can happen there. As you come through here on cliffside, curve 2, and then curve 3 is where it gets a little tricky. Todd Hayes and our sled crashed back in World Cup in 2004. And then as you come through the Devil's Highway here, there's a reason it's called the Devil's Highway. These turns are super quick together, and you come into 8 here, that's where some sleds can have a bit of an issue, and then you come into shady, get a little bit of a time to catch your breath, a lot of G-forces right here, and then right into the labyrinth here where, again, on and off, and these drivers have to lift the sled up and pull it down and lift the sled up. As you shoot through the chicanes here, the only time you have to really catch your breath in Lake Placid, and then right back into some hard G-forces, into the heart. Quick little turn there that catches a lot of people, and uphill in the 19, the sled starts to decelerate. You start to realize you've made it through the hardest track in the world. As you come up through the braking stretch here, you just are pretty happy. You're checking your time, but you're also shaking the cobwebs out, and you're pretty happy you got to the bottom.
And breathing as well. There was a couple of drivers last week who said, yeah, basically you breathe to corner 2, and then after that, there's just no time for any of that.
It's just intense.
Yeah.
That is the difference.
Francesco Friedrich, 2 wins so far this season in the 2 races, ahead of Brad Hall in the points. Brad in the silver medal position both times out, led last time out in Park City after the first heat, and then Francesco Friedrich, as is his wont, came steaming back through to retake the lead. Well, we have 13 sleds in the field, and the return to the World Cup for the first time in a long while, not just of Steve Messler, but of Edson Bindilatti of Brazil. So the Brazilians back here. They spent a lot of time sliding in North America and joining the World Cup. He was doing the North America's Cup Trail just a week ahead of us for the last few events. So the track is in great shape. It is pretty bumpy because it's been a mild fall, but the ice is holding up well. And -3 degrees, we had 4 track records in the Monobob first heat. Now, the track record here goes back to 2003. So that is a massive target, one of the oldest in the business.
It's the World Championships right there. So you have World Championship ice in February.
Yeah. All right, so let's get this underway. Again, no huddle offense all afternoon. As we get our first sled on ice, Edson Bindilatti of Brazil and Edson Martins, who took the bronze in the 2-man push championship. The 43-year-old driver has had 27 2-man races here in the NAC and took gold last weekend.
And as you saw them on the start, they're a bit lumbering. You saw them just trying to get a little bit of a long extension on their push there. And 2 cliffside will get you. And here comes through into 3. Oh, we are on a different corner here.
This is exit 4.
Exit 4, there we go. Into the Devil's Highway. This is where it gets a little bit shaky and a little bit rocky. And for a new driver, a young driver like the Brazilian, or well, a less experienced driver like the Brazilian here, you're happy you got through the Devil's Highway there.
111.9, 69.5 miles an hour. So with the extra weight compared to the Monobobs, going even faster.
And here he's just trying to let it come out of 14 without. That's a great exit of 14, but he catches the first bit of the chicanes there, which sends him sideways.
127.9, 79 miles an hour. We'll be into the 80s by the end of today.
And a great entrance in 19 here. As you come into an uphill section of this track, and in 19 and 20, we want to watch and make sure those sleds are clean on the entrance of 19. Because if you can keep your momentum up that hill, Martin, then it finishes the whole rest of the heat for you.
Well, he's had 2 World Cup finishes in 18th place on this track in his 5 previous World Cup appearances. So Edson Bindilatti of Brazil will be aiming to improve on that. A finish here will be his World Cup best ever result.
And as we see him come here, he's got to pull that sled off of, I believe that's got to be 12 right there through the middle of the labyrinth there. And coming out, he shoots through out of 14 here, lets it fly, and it just catches that first left edge. And then that can be all he wrote at that point. But actually, that little tap he had there on the way in to 17 is actually pretty helpful. That one right there will set you up into 17. You don't have to drive that hard at that point.
Princesa te ama, Arthur, Luísa, papai ama vocês. Tamo junto, obrigado.
Took his first ever North America's Cup gold here a couple of weeks ago. So he's having quite a good time. World Cup debutant now, Pat Norton and Kenny and Pindu, the 30-year-old driver, 27-year-old brakeman in only his 6th ever bobsled race of any kind.
And the Canadians here have got their head coach, Todd Hayes, who's got, let's just call it a fair amount of experience on this track as an American Olympic silver medalist here. So they've got some good inside tracks of how to get down.
Yeah, we've lost our camera on corner 3, so that's exit of 4 into 5.
And coming through the Devil's Highway here and into 8. Really smooth transition there. Had to drive a little bit hard on his way into 9, but that's okay. Sets him up for Shady.
Right, so 2100s back. They didn't have quite as much at the start as the Brazilians.
And what we're looking for here, Martin, is trying to see as little bit about a runner movement as possible. And there you go. But he kept his cool.
Yeah.
He kept his cool.
At that speed, you have to. You can't allow the mistakes to get to you, otherwise you're just going to wreck it.
Yeah, and when you're on the flat, you can't just start to drive back and forth. There's no pressure in these runners, and you just wind up skidding back and forth at that point, even worse than you could.
57.30, 2800s back. Pat Norton, former brakeman. So his first World Cup was as a 4-man brakeman here in 2019, pushing Nick Polonyato. And he's now here driving the sled, 30 years old. And his brakeman, one of the a slew of new athletes
holds
from
on
Canada.
A little bit long there, and that's what happens if you drive a little bit too much in the middle of the corner, and the pressure's just going to build up, and that sled he couldn't get it off on the end. And if he could have driven it off hard there, but if he drove it off hard, he'd drive right into the next wall. So a little bit of patience. It looks a little scary. That sled hangs out there, but you can feel whether you're in control or not.
Yeah, you gotta believe.
Yep.
That you've got the line. Geoffrey Gadbois next up for Team USA. 9th World Cup start for Jeff. He was 19th and 18th here. We had a double 2-man weekend back in 2019. That was the last time we were here. Park City, 10th place 2 weeks ago, his home track. That was his best result. This is very much more home for him, though.
Absolutely. As the Americans start to rebuild this program going into the next Olympic quad here, Jeff is, again, a great finish in Park City last week. This is a track he's going to have a lot of experience on. We expect really good things out of him today.
Brakeman Martin Christopherson, a World Cup debutant, but won push gold last weekend. Grabbed a grand.
Strong as an ox, Christopherson. You follow him on Instagram, you will see that he is just a big boy. Yeah. Which on this flat track like this can be sometimes good. You get that long strength that just builds up as a push athlete. Let's make it through the labyrinth here.
From the green into the red, but a much tidier chicane.
Fantastic chicane.
Now he should come back into the lead here.
A little bit of a hard entrance in the 19th. Sorry, Martin.
Yep.
A little bit of a hard entrance in the 19th there. He's not going to like that coming up the hill here. It's going to put him just in the lead by 1/100 of a second ahead of the Brazilians.
So best result he's had on this track, 17th place. And again, he will, if he finishes this race, definitely beat that. His aim, though, I'm sure will be to get himself into the top 10. Let's see how fate decides.
And again, see how those front runners there, we're not seeing him go back and forth. And he takes that little tap on the left, which again sets him up into 17, really nice. And here's this entrance in 19. See, that's just a little bit early. He's got to drive a little hard, cut ice on the way uphill, which is just going to kill your speed. He's not going to be happy with that end. That'll cost you at least 1/10 of a second at that point.
18 is a curve that has so many flaws. 5th World Cup start as a driver for Frank Del Duca. Didn't race here in 2019 as a driver. He was still a brakeman at that stage. Hakeem Abdul-Sabor behind him. And he's had 10 2-man World Cup races here in North America's Cup.
Frankie's coming off of an ankle twist last week at Push World Championships. Let's see how this looks. You can tell a little bit tender.
Yeah, but he's not taped too badly.
No,
so
he's digging in, though.
Yeah, he was on crutches last weekend. 5:23.
That's a great start at the beginning here. Hakeem is just an amazing athlete. Yeah. So yeah, When you're pushing a driver you know is hurt, you give it just a little bit more as they enter the exit curve 4 here.
Yeah. Nice lines. Best speed of all for Frank Del Duca. And for one of the younger drivers in the field, actually he's been very impressive so far this season.
Really consistent so far. Yeah, it's great to see.
Now, of course, when he gets to European tracks that he knows less well, then that's where the uphill struggle begins. But that confidence is going to take a while to
get yourself some points at the beginning of the season. Like you said, get yourself some confidence.
2100s up, building his lead over teammate Geoff Gadbois.
And you saw there he was a little bit later in the 19th, which meant he was able to keep his speed, not drive as hard, and extended his lead at the bottom of the track.
Brian Scheimer, Shana Roebuck watching on. They'll be happy with that.
You know, it's great to watch this. I was talking to Brian Scheimer a couple nights ago when I got into town. And, you know, we were talking about the rebuilding that needs to happen here. And he's got the athletes. He feels good about the pilots. He feels good about as they're building their athlete push line there as well.
Sylvia Hoffman calling the race for Monobob, sled dogging for two-man.
Yep. We are our own push athletes in bobsled. It's a blue-collar sport, to say the least.
Yeah.
And we see him coming through the chicanes here. Again, just a bit of a crooked straightaway, and this is what happens when you don't get it exactly right.
Well, again, he got the square slap there off the wall. So that fared well. Frank Del Duca leads. Next up, the first of our German sleds. Hansi Lochner, in what we understand is his last World Cup season, continued after the games for the World Championships in Samaritz. A good place for any athlete to round out their career.
And he's got Fleischauer behind him, who was a 400-meter hurdler that competed in the 2011 World Championship in Dachau. So amazing. Also, the Germans always bring track athletes, and they always bring top world-class track athletes to the sport, which is fantastic to see that crossover happening.
And Fleischauer making his World Cup debut in the two-man sled.
And you can see that push and that German technology and the experienced driver Lochner starting to pull away here from the home team. Already 4,500s up halfway down the track.
Well, 3 years since we've seen this ice with the European sleds, so that muscle memory coming back well.
It does. It really does. You know, these guys, it's so baked into your psyche, so baked into your nervous system. Once you've been here a handful of times, you've had experience. Oh, Hun's a little late down there. A little late off the 17. Got a little greedy. Tried to run it a little long.
Well, all three German drivers rolled their sleds in Whistler the first week of training because the ice was different from how they remembered it. They got, oh yeah, I know this. Here's the line. Oh, apparently that's no longer the line. Yeah, so 55.90. Hansi just pushing on a little bit more.
He's going to be happy with the run all the way up until that 17, 18, 19 crossover there, but...
Well, he and Francesco Friedrich won a race each and took a silver medal each last time we were here, so he could be one of our favourites today.
And look, there's the big 400 hurdler in the back.
Look at that.
Hard for a big boy like that to get inside the sled. But the thing about Lake Placid is you can crash on 10 different corners in this track. Right? He knows it got a little squirrely. 17, 18 is one of the hardest places. That's where I crashed my first time driving here as well.
That's the Hansi Lochner. I got away with that one, giggle. Yeah, we've seen that a couple of times. Next up then, Cedric Follador for Switzerland. His rookie season, the 28-year-old, his fourth World Cup start. He has never been in North America in the front of a sled.
And it's a great experience. Look, it's post-Olympic year for these guys. He's just trying to get reps at this point.
Yeah.
This year for developing drivers like this is about learning these tracks. Just like the Americans, we have to go over there and we have to learn those tracks.
Yep.
You know, the good news for them is there's only 3 for them to learn over here.
Yes, exactly right, yeah.
But 2 of them are pretty gnarly.
Yeah.
Whistler and Lake Placid are difficult ones to learn, and they're pretty fearful. You get at the top, and the start house is a little more quiet in Whistler and a little more quiet in Lake Placid. The guys aren't quite as jovial. They're not quite as joking with each other. They're letting the drivers focus, and they themselves are trying to get their minds ready to go down this track, as you see having a really difficult labyrinth there.
Now, does he get cleanly through the chicane? Not bad at all.
Not bad at all. Sets him up well for 17. And there we go.
Boy, oh boy.
17 is that corner that sets you up for that little mixed part there and loses all kinds of time coming up the hill.
Yeah.
But there's a couple pressures in there, and if you just drive down a little bit too hard at the end of 17 there, that pressure is going to catch you up because the corner is a little longer than you think it should be.
Yeah.
Which means that pressure just extends a little longer and it can catch you at the end.
And with the shades down, you don't see the full corner either. And the speed they're going, what was he doing? 79.5 miles an hour. And he nearly
And you see him come down
it.
a little bit too early there, and then the sled comes back up, and that's what brought him up on that flat part of the wall there, and it gets scary. And there's not much you can do at that point except for really hope you have enough left.
That is Code Brown That is third place down to fifth place. Yes. Sketchy.
Yep. You do not want to crash on this track. It is no fun.
Nobody wants to roll it at nearly 80 miles an hour.
No.
Next up, Markus Treichl and Markus Sammer for Austria. Markus Treichl 21st in both two-man races here back in 2019. But he is having a very strong season. Now, he's inherited Benny Meyer's braking crew. Markus Sammer there, the classic example.
Great in the back. I mean, that was push athletes. So maybe next run we'll talk a little bit more about the push athletes in the form that we see coming down this track here. But the Austrians have got a really great long line that started back with Wolfgang Stampfer back in the 2000s. Yep. One of the best hands, some of the best hands in bobsled. These drivers are pulling on two what are called D-rings that are connected to the axles in the front there, and they have different settings for them, Martin, and you generally want to have them a little bit less sensitive on a track like Placid because you're going to jerk this sled all over the place and react. I mean, a guy like the late Steve Holcomb, who was the best driver to ever drive this track, had it barely sensitive at all. He was just cranking on this thing back and forth because through here especially, you need to be able to react. Your body's going to react, and you don't want it to be too sensitive, so you overreact in the sled sometimes. Much smoother exit of 17 and a 19, 125 coming up the hill.
Top three run at the moment for Markus Treichl if he keeps it clean out of 20. Second place.
And there's Wolfgang Stampfer as we speak of him right there.
Yeah, see a lot of Wolfie, and he was a very good driver, not the strongest starter, but the other thing that he was great at was massaging his sleds so they made great numbers at top speed. You could go to Samarit and guarantee a Stampfer sled would be fastest.
Absolutely. They're working on what isn't too different from a NASCAR style, you know, for our American audience here, from a NASCAR style where there's some rules that you have to stay within, but then you can change the size of the width of the sled, the height of the sled, the shape of it just a little bit. You can make all these tweaks, and Wolfie and the Austrians were really, really great at that back in their day.
Yeah, he's just got a bit of magic aerodynamic influence somewhere. So, Markus Treichl, great run for him. He lies second to Hansi Lochner. What about Simon Friedli? 18th World Cup as a driver, has not raced here in the front before. Finished fifth with his now coach Rico Peter back in 2017 rather.
Yeah, 5:17 start. Again, it's post-Olympic year. Our what we're expecting to see out of our push athletes and our drivers here is a little bit lower. 5:17 on a regular day in a World Cup would not be what you're looking for. But again, your first trip down this track, you're trying to make it through and try to learn as you go. That's the goal. As these guys leave here on Sunday and get back on their planes and head home for the holidays, they want to feel like that they learned at least half the corners. They have a better idea.
Lost out on a grand in the push worlds by 1/100th of a second over 3 runs. He could not believe it was so tight with Chris Horn and Martin Christopherson.
That was a tough loss. The Americans came through. Again, great setup going into 17 here. Let's see if he can have the patience. Really, really great exit there.
Still second best run. We've got Brad Hall and Francesco Friedrich to come, but this is a really nice looking run from Simon Friedli. Lost speed at the end there. There is Rico Peter on the right-hand side.
Yeah, sitting in fourth as we head into the, here come the big boys. A young man named Francesco Friedrich, I believe, is up next, who will most likely come down here, and we're going to see him set the pace. And we'll talk a little bit about what Alexander Brakeman's doing in the back here as well. Yeah,
Francesco Friedrich's been coming here for nearly 15 years sliding, so he will be as competitive as ever. Yeah. It was good up top, wasn't it, though, from Friedli?
A great run. I mean, again, this is his first time here. I would not have said that, watching him come down the track, if I didn't know that already. Again, that little setup there, that little tap gives you a nice, gentle entrance into 17. And we've got Friedrich in his big former discus thrower in the back here.
Alex Schuler. Last week it was Torsten Margis or Park City. Alex started the season in Whistler.
So as the brakeman head, you see them drop their head there. What they're trying to do is they're pushing off of both legs, both feet at that point, and it's like a squat or power clean out of the back. They're pulling the sled through, trying to get it out in front of them as quickly as they can so they can get into a power position and start to just sprint. It is a sprint when they're going down this thing. And what they want to do is they're getting in the sled right before or right as they're hitting top speed. Because if you hit top speed and you have to pull yourself back in, all you're doing is pulling the sled back. And here comes the best driver in the world at this point, coming down the hardest track in the world, making it look like an easy, making it look like, let's call it Winterberg.
Yeah. Well, we had that from Tina Hermann in the women's skeleton yesterday. The first run was a little bit touch and go. The second one, it was like a German track for her. She was incredible. But Friedrich, 900s behind Hansi Lochner.
And that without that tap into 17, we can talk about the replay. Without that tap into 17, it caused him some trouble going into 17. He sucked up some speed there, and it's caused him to slow down.
And across the line, second place, 1700s back. He found more time at the bottom because he was 1800s back.
Do we know the last time that we've seen Francesco Friedrich be 1700s down after the first heat in a World Cup?
He was further back than that in Park City after the first heat, yeah. But he turned in a run that was 3,500
so we've
better.
Been there, and here's the push and the big boy in the back as they get in. And Friedrich's an amazingly strong. Remember when he first came out, how big of a push athlete he was and how great of an athlete he was. Comes in. That's a little bit of a harder landing into that sled that we'd like to see, especially as you see that those things slide here. So watch him come through the chicanes. We've been talking about that benefit of, on the right side of our camera there, the tap that they've been taking. He doesn't get the tap, and what happened was he comes flying into 17, and he had to drive it really hard. That cost him 500 to a tenth of a second right there at the very least.
All right, so Hansi Lochner needs Francesco Friedrich, Marcus Treichl third. What about Michael Vogt and Sandro Michel? 7th and 11th here in 2019's two-man races. We had a double two-man weekend and then a double four-man weekend. We were here for so long because Park City was due to be on the calendar, but their refrigeration system went on the fritz, and so there we didn't go. 5:15 getaway. And that is the third fastest start so far.
Michael, former gymnast, actually, that came over to bobsleigh.
And been saying for a couple of years, his brakeman, Sandro Michel, earns his living in the summer as an underwear model. Michael Vogt finally admitted that was just a lie that he put in his biography for him.
Excellent. You can't trust the push athlete on those kinds of things to fill out their own bios. That's what the internet's for.
Yeah. Can't trust a brakeman, can't trust a driver.
Really great hands coming through the labyrinth here. You want to drive as little as possible. What does that mean? Every single time you drive, and see how he's on this side of the chicanes, that side. So he came in on the high side of the chicane, high side of 17, which caused him not have to drive very much. And he did it without the tap, actually, which is even harder to do.
Third best speed, third best run, third at the line, 2100s back. There's a very happy Rico Peter, and that'll be a happy Michael Vogt as well.
He took the line you want through the chicanes. That's the old Steve Holcomb line where you come out of 14, you let the sled come out a little bit on the left, and then you just have enough pressure, Martin. You let go of it just a little bit coming out of 14 with enough pressure that it just fades itself back in and you get an early entrance into 17. A nice start here. Let's see how gentle he's coming in there. Nice and smooth entrance. And then watch him as he comes through here. And watch the sled just start to come right back towards the left of our screen, which is going to put him on the corner nice and early. That is the perfect chicane.
Yeah, there you go. That's exactly what the coach is telling him. Just straight through. And it must feel great as well.
Oh,
you must feel that speed build as
It's so satisfying, too, as a driver, having driven this track. You come in, then you don't have to drive very hard going into 17 either.
Next of our Canadians is Taylor Austin. Silas Gray behind him. This is only Taylor's 4th World Cup. He's done 1 Olympics after 1 World Cup appearance in St. Moritz last year.
And big Cyrus Gray, I must admit, lived with my family over the summer, this past summer. We took in a bobsled. My wife learned very early that we paid for it. Big Cyrus Gray.
Big skid there from 2 into 3.
Yeah, and he and Tyler, they've been excited to work together this year. Cyrus won the Canadian Push Championships, and they've been excited to see what Austin could do with a big push.
Yeah.
Because he's not himself a great starter, but big Cyrus behind there, a Liberian immigrant to Canada who came over here at 12 years old and is just doing amazing things in his first few years in the sport.
Nice run through the chicane, 4th best speed. It was a top 10 start. Let's see if he can climb a couple of spots.
Really great through 17, 18, 19. That should help him. And he moved
7th.
up.
Absolutely. Good bottom to the track, 56.93.
These guys are going to be, let's just say, content with that. With 2 more sleds to go down the hill, it puts them in the top 10 position.
And again, you know, his only previous World Cup in St. Moritz just to get the qualification for the games in January last year. So most of the European tracks are going to be a bit of an eye-opener for these guys.
Indeed, and they knew that's coming, so they were hoping to just get through North America, have 3 top 10 finishes. Got a little bit greedy on the edge of 18 there, but that's okay. That's all right, as long as you get a little greedy, as long as it doesn't bite you, and it didn't on that one. So he's going to be happy with that.
There you go. So 2 sleds remain in the first of our 2 heats. Race 3 of the 2-man World Cup. Brad Hall and Greg Cackett making his first 2-man World Cup start since January this year, which was Sigulda, where they took a silver medal.
And Brad was hoping to get his first debut last week in Park City.
Yep.
Knee was bothering him a little bit, so they waited till this week.
So Brad Hall, 2 silver medals so far this season. Did not race here the last time we were here. But
and a 5:11 start. These guys are pushing a heavy sled. What does that mean? It means both of the the driver and the push athlete a little bit lighter, which means they want more weight in the sled. And especially with the amount of uphill in Lake Placid, Martin, you want to have the sled weighed down as heavy as you can because you want the benefit of that mass coming through the bottom of the heart and up into the 1920.
Best speed of all, 700s back at the start. The gap went out to 1200s back.
And he's pulling them in here at 13.
Yep. Best speed as well, 70.8 miles an hour. So from here on, he is chasing down the leader. Habitually, it's Francesco Friedrich. Currently, it's Hansi Lochner. Still best speed.
Really great drive by Brad here.
But the gap is opening up. 3rd, 4th maybe on the splits. The speed is good, but he's 4 tenths back, and that will be very disappointing.
You know, Martin, this is a really long track. That German technology is really, really helpful for these guys as they come down here on this long track. A lot of wind builds up over time.
Yeah. Brad is definitely of the opinion that the FES sleds have a little bit more in terms of top speed. He had the highest speed, 82.1 miles an hour it's showing. Whether that's quite accurate or not, we'll wait and see.
And as he's coming through here again, those runners are silent. He's being really patient. The sled, that was a little bit more of a tap than you want. So he kind of drug along the wall. It didn't just take a nice clean tap and set him up into 17, but yeah. Not terribly happy. Get the camera off of me, boys.
1 down, 1 to go for Brad Hall. And our final runner is Christoph Hafer with Matthias Sommer behind him. Matthias in his 8th 2-man World Cup. And Christoph had a 9th and a 7th place here in the last 2 World Cups in 2019, the only time he's been on this track.
I love that behind the push athletes back there, you can really see the way that they drop their knees and explode off of that block. These sleds weigh close to 400 pounds of the 2-man sled. That is a lot of mass to have to move together. They come through sliding through cliffside here. It's really a shame we can't see that exit of 3 as they come through, because that's a lot of action that happens there, and it really sets you up for the Devil's Highway here. A little bit late into 8 there. Oh, he saved it well. Saved it nice.
6th best start, up to 5th with 3rd best speed, Christoph Hafer. He has got good hands.
And he's driving this track really well. This is a very difficult part of the track right there. Comes through, a couple knocks there. That's not great, but it's not the worst thing.
And this is still a top 5 run, ahead of Marcus Treichl, Frank Del Duca.
Really smooth on the edge of 19. That should really help him out as he comes across the line here.
He picks off Brad Hall by 200ths of a second.
You know, Martin, all in all, for a post-Olympic year and a lot of guys who have not slid this track very much, that's a really great heat.
Yeah.
They look fantastic, boys.
I think Hafer is going to have a good European season. He's definitely starting to position himself as the natural replacement for Johannes Lochner. Hans-Peter Hanikhofer is here as well, who's the other kind of 3rd-tier German slider at the moment, if you like. He wasn't entirely healthy at the beginning of the season, so didn't start World Cup, but they're going to have all of that sorting out again. Christmas, New Year, push trials, drive-offs, all that kind of stuff.
All the fun stuff.
All the fun stuff.
That's what we're here for. These guys train all summer and get to compete all winter.
And here is our leader, as always, in the yellow sled so far this season, but this time it is not Francesco Friedrich, it is Johannes Lochner who leads after the first heat. A win and a silver apiece for him and Friedrich last time out here in 2-man. There's only one set of medals this time. Can Lochner hold on? Friedrich is in second. Well, Hansi got away with a scary moment or two down at the bottom of the run. 1700s ahead of Friedrich. Both have things to tidy up, and that might be trouble for Vogt and Hafer and Hall and Treichl and those chasing them. I don't think anybody actually had a run that they're going to be entirely happy with.
Very, very few times you have a run in Lake Placid. There's too many places to make mistakes here. There's too many places that you're trying to find speed and find that edge between speed and crashing on this track in particular.
How many times did Holke go, right, that's as good as it's ever going to get, let's go back to the hotel?
One time.
Yeah, oh, really? As many as
that
one?
was one time,
All right. I'm impressed with that. All right, that's it for the first heat of the two-man bobsled. Steve Messler will return for the deciding heat. The two-man will be back on at 4:15 local, 21:15 GMT. Monobob coming up next.